Hi, I'm Chad with Move for Guitar. This lesson is from our series Music Theory for Guitar. In this lesson, I'm going to show you how to build an augmented triad. First off, download our free e-guide, Music Theory for Guitar. It contains everything that I'm talking about in this lesson, all the charts and diagrams, as well as much more, so it'll be really useful to you. And like I said, it's free, so there's no reason not to just go download that. But I am working on it right now as I'm filming this lesson, so it may not be available as you're watching this lesson. And if it's not available yet, it'll say coming soon. And if you'd like to get notified when it is available, you can sign up for our mailing list and we'll send you a notification for when it is available and let you download it. And also, if you're signed up for our mailing list, you'll receive all updated versions as well. But don't worry, you don't need the e-guide to follow along with this lesson because all the charts and diagrams will be on the screen. And also, we add at least one new lesson every day, so be sure to subscribe. This is part 2.4 from our series Music Theory for Guitar. If you'd like to go back and start at the beginning, you can click the link on the screen. So in these last lessons, we've been talking about triads. We talked about the major triad, the minor triad, and the diminished triad. And in the first lesson, I also explained what triads were and some theory behind them. So if you need that, you can go back and start at 2.1. If not, you can just keep moving forward with this lesson. So like I said, in the last lesson, I showed you how to build a diminished triad. And in this lesson, I'm going to show you how to build an augmented triad. And augmented triads are unique. For one thing, they're not part of the major scale like the major, the minor, and the diminished triads. Those triads can be built straight out of the major scale. Augmented triads come from different scales, which we'll talk about in later lessons. But even though they don't come out of the major scale, they're really important to understand for understanding how to build chords and chord harmony and all of that. And it's important to at least understand this part about them because it's information you'll need down the road. And like I said at the beginning, these four triads are the most common triads are going to give you everything you need for setting the foundation for building chords. Another reason an augmented triad is unique is because it's what's known as a symmetrical chord. And I'll explain that coming up in this lesson. And to build an augmented triad, we're going to start back at the major triad because the major triad and the augmented triad are very similar. The only difference between the two is that an augmented triad has a sharp 5 instead of a regular 5 or a perfect fifth. So as you remember, a major triad is a root, major third, perfect fifth, or we're just stacking a major third and a minor third interval. And it looks like this. This is the shape of the major triad. An augmented triad is a root, major third, augmented fifth. So it's a 1, 3, sharp 5. Or if you were looking at it as stacking thirds, it would be stacking two major thirds together. And those two thirds stacked together are what make it a symmetrical chord because the distance between the root and the third is a major third interval. The distance from the third to the sharp 5 is a major third interval. And then the distance from the sharp 5 back to the root is another major third interval. So that's why this is a symmetrical chord. And a symmetrical chord just means that all the intervals in that chord are the same distance apart. So you can see every interval in this chord is a major third apart. And here's what the augmented triad looks like if we move them to their unison notes, the 3 and the sharp 5. So we've moved our 3 to this unison note, we've moved our sharp 5 to this unison note. And because this is a symmetrical chord, it means that this shape right here, if you were to play this chord up and down the fretboard on these same string sets, on the 6th, the 5th, and the 4th, this shape would stay the exact same. You would just move up in major third intervals. And I don't want to get into that too much. If that's confusing, don't worry about it for now. We're going to talk a lot about that later, but that's another reason they're called symmetrical chords, or why symmetrical chords are unique, because their shape stays the same as you go through what are called the inversions of that chord. But that's probably confusing for now. I'm just mentioning it for now, touching on it now, and we'll dive into it later. But that is something that's different than the major, the minor, or the diminished triads. Their shapes don't stay the same as you play them up the fretboard. So again, we can also look at this from just starting at the major triad and moving the 5th up half a step. So this is a major triad, move the 5th up half a step, that becomes an augmented triad. And as you can see, from here to here is a major third. From the root to the 5 is a perfect fifth interval. Or if you're looking at it as stacking thirds, you have a major third from the root to the 3 and a major third from the 3 to the 5. And again, like the diminished chord, this isn't a chord that you've probably played if you just play open chords. This isn't a common chord, although it's probably a little more common in popular music than diminished chords are. But still, it's probably not a chord that you've played. It's one that you'll use a lot when you get into more advanced music, if you want to get into more advanced music. But even if you don't, like I said with the diminished chord, it's really important for understanding music theory and understanding how to build chords and everything else you learn as you're going through these lessons on music theory. So that's how to build an augmented triad. Go ahead and move on to the next lesson where we're going to keep talking about triads and start talking about how they can really help you. So just go ahead and move on. Download this e-guide so that you can use this as a reference anytime you need to look up these charts that I've been showing you. And be sure to subscribe because we add at least one new lesson every day.